This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by Federal Premium Ammunition, North Dakota Tourism, Onyx Hunt, and by Chief Upland. Push further and hunt longer with a game-changing vest from Chief Upland. My guest today may just own South Dakota's birdiest fields. Eric Johannsen is the owner and operator of Johannsen Farms Outfitting near Aberdeen, South Dakota. Eric manages his property for 100% wild birds. We'll get a hatch update from Eric and find out his recipe for incredible wild pheasant hunting success. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton, as always, produces this show. Today, my guest comes from Aberdeen, South Dakota. If you're a Pheasants Forever member, odds are pretty good that you've heard from or read about my guest today. Eric Johannsen is a wildlife habitat champion in South Dakota, farming his ground for incredible numbers of wild pheasants. Eric, I sure appreciate you taking the time to share some of your wisdom today.
Absolutely. It's great to finally get a chance to have a visit and talk all great things, pheasants, habitat, wildlife, and to me, most importantly, farming and ranching.
Yeah, well, I've admired your work from afar for a long time. So this conversation is something I've really looked forward to. But which rose first today? The sun or you? Or who rose first, you or the sun?
Yeah, this morning the sun got me by just a little bit, but not by much. But Travis, is kind of the nature of the beast. This time of year on a working farm and ranch, there's a long laundry list of things to get done, and only so much time to get them done. So there's some long hours, but it's all worth it.
So farming for pheasants may sound like a dream job for some of our listeners, but you do a whole lot more than plant grass in the ground and watch pheasant chicks hatch. Describe, when you say working farm, describe what you do and what your farming operation entails out there.
Yeah, I guess when I speak of a working farm, that's exactly what it is. I mean, first and foremost, it's a production agriculture farm and ranch. So it's about raising crops, raising cattle, and trying to make the operation run. That's our primary revenue source. That is our biggest thing we do. So when it comes to that, it's just like any other farm. The thing that us as a family we try to focus on is what in our operation, what makes our farm tick. What are our greatest assets? What are the concerns we have to deal with, and then how do we make everything work together? And for our philosophy, it's growing the best crop, raising the best crops we can, managing our grasslands, using the cattle as a tool to provide and build the best grazing system we can to produce more grass on the landscape, and how wildlife, interacts with all that. So that's kind of how we as a family farming operation kind of view things, and trying to sometimes make everything work can be a little bit of a challenge. But I think the biggest thing is, if you step back, take a breath, try to get out of your own way sometimes, take a look at what Mother Nature is trying to tell you. It makes things a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. So on your website, it says that you're the fifth generation to operate your family farm, consisting of over 5,000 acres of prime wildlife habitat. So fifth generation means, did you grow up on that farm too?
Yeah. Yep. I am actually fourth generation.
Okay.
The fifth generation is up and coming here.
Are they working right now as we're talking?
I got a 14-year-old that I don't know is quite working as much as she probably should, but yeah, she's got a list of things to do. That's for sure.
Gotcha. So how many kids do you have?
I get the 14-year-old, the youngest here is still in the house. So
Okay.
I got a total of three, two older girls that are out of the house off the farm. They are making a great life for themselves, and one actually lives not too far from where you're located.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. So is the goal, do you think, at some point one of them will take over the farm?
Yeah, my youngest daughter is definitely interested in it, but I think obviously, when you take a look at my dad and myself, I think or any other farmer and rancher, I think that's always kind of in the back of your head.
Hmm.
It's something you hope for, but most importantly, I think from a parenting standpoint, and that's something I probably don't know near enough about, but I'm trying my best. I think, like we all are,
Yep.
is giving them the opportunity to do what they want to do. So find their passion, figure it out, and if that involves a farm and ranch, perfect. But
Hmm.
so that's a goal in our family, is trying to keep an operation, a farm and ranch, viable, profitable. The big word these days is sustainable. Not
Hmm.
for today, but for future generations. Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I ask about your daughters wanting to take over, because I believe there was probably a certain point in your life where you knew that was something you wanted to do. Do you remember when that was for you?
Uh, Gosh, I think it was right away. I didn't really know it at that time, but um, there was just always this pull bringing me back to the farm and ranch, trying to figure out a way to get back here and make this, my everyday. So I really don't know if there was one thing, but to those who know, sometimes there's just that pull that you find yourself being the best person you can be, when
Hmm.
you're surrounded by what you love. And the farming ranching thing out here in the prairies of South Dakota, that's kind of where I think I need to be. It sure feels like home.
Did you ever leave?
Uh, yeah, I graduated high school and I went to SDSU, South Dakota State University in Brookings, South Dakota, and got a degree there. And I wanted to come back to the farm, but sometimes there's only so much, so many ways a pie can be cut before it turns into mush, and it's not good for anybody.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of took off and dipped my toe in the financial planning universe, and did that for a while. Obviously, always coming back to the farm, working on weekends, and all my vacation time was kind of spent doing that. And then wasn't too far into that. I just had an opportunity to lease a little bit of ground and join my father and older brother in the farming operation, and I haven't looked back since. It's been great.
Gotcha. So are your is your brother and your father still involved in the family farm?
Oh yeah, yep, yeah. My older brother, he's kind of the agronomist of the farm. He's everything crops and crop production, and my father is 75 years young, and he works every day. You can't tell him not to do something because he's just going to do it, just to prove you wrong. So that's the kind of mentality he has. Yeah, he is the bona fide, tried and true farmer rancher of that baby boomer generation that does what he loves, and he does it a lot. I mean, he's not afraid to work 60-hour week at 75 years old.
Wow.
That's just part of his DNA.
So what does a typical day look like on the Johannsen family farm right now? Can you walk me through a routine and see if our listeners still think that it's a dream job?
Oh, well, one, there's no such thing as a routine.
Okay.
It's when you're multifaceted, you have the crop production, multiple crops, and cattle and everything else. It's you usually have a great plan when you start the day, and you work your areas of priority, but that changes sometimes once, twice, three times a day. Sometimes it changes by the hour. So the nice thing is you never get bored, and there's always job security.
So right now you've got cattle as a top priority, correct?
Yeah. Scouting crop fields. Everything's pretty much been planted. We got some warm season hay crops that are planning to be planted this week yet. So scouting fields, making sure herbicide programs are working, doing some plant tissue tests, trying to see where the plants are sitting, far as the nutrient availability, making sure that our soil fertility and everything that we put together is working, that the plant's actually able to get to it. And then on the cattle side, we got all the cow-calf pairs on grass, and most of our grazing systems are set up to utilize a rotational grazing system. So we're moving cattle to a new area of a pasture, fresh grass, about every 4 to 5 days. Some of the areas it's a little bit longer; it's 6 to 7, and so that takes a little bit of time. It isn't too bad. The cattle are used to it. They get trained really quick. They can be standing in great lush grass, but they know it's time to move when you come out there with the 4-wheeler and they hear that coming over the hill. They usually race you to the gate of the next paddock to get in there. So yeah, this time of year it's taking care of cattle stuff, scouting crops, trying to stay on top of things, and making sure that if there is an issue, we can address it in a timely manner.
Gotcha. Well, I want to get to, and we'll do this in a little while. We'll get to, the drought conditions or moisture in your hatch right now. We'll talk about that shortly. But before we do, I kind of want to get into understanding a little bit more about how a family farm becomes a wildlife outfitting business as well, because you guide hunters in the fall for both pheasants and whitetail, correct?
Yeah, yep, yeah, and it's a small part of our operation. The hunting operation we do is all wild birds. So the habitat and the pheasants kind of dictate the size of it and the amount of hunters we can bring in every year. So it's a relatively small operation, but we focus on quality, a true wild bird hunting experience. And
you're very modest, not to interrupt, but you're very modest about it being a small operation, because I know several people that have hunted out at your place, and they've all said that you probably have the birdiest pheasant fields in South Dakota.
Well, yeah. Whoever said that, thank you. That's always great to hear. Yeah, it's try to turn a lot of it into the best production agriculture as we can, but you recognizing what the landscape is and what it's, hopefully we're able to identify what its best use is, and some of it is just wildlife habitat. We are in the prairie pothole region, so we have a lot of natural depressions, and a lot of it is protected by wetland easements. So utilizing those areas, understanding that sometimes it's not cost effective to try to farm them, and leaving them set aside, some of these intermittent wetlands, to natural grass and vegetation. And when you have those kind of spread out across on the landscapes, and you add in a diversified crop rotation, and the way you're managing the way we try to manage our native prairies, it can really turn into a pretty good environment, a pretty good landscape for wildlife. And in this area, the pheasant is king. It really is. That ringneck pheasant is something that is well adapted to the landscape we have here. That and the white-tailed deer. So yeah, it's something that's kind of near and dear to me, important to me and us as a family, is having that wildlife component on the farm. When you see lots of wildlife, deer, pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, the number of, on our wetter years, like the last couple of years, 2019 and 2020, when you see the number of waterfowl that utilize your property, your farm, your ranch acres for nesting and brood rearing and all that, it's pretty special. It really is.
Did you have all of that growing up, or was there a certain point that you, maybe your brothers said, hey, we want to add wildlife habitat to this farm?
We always had it, but there comes a point, and that was kind of my passion is the wildlife side of it. And then once you start taking a look at how everything works together, you can tweak this part of our operation and that part. And is that going to make a difference from a wildlife standpoint, from a habitat standpoint? So that was kind of one of my ways to get back to the farm full time is, I wanted to implement some things habitat wise to benefit wildlife on our farm, and trying to figure out how to make that all work, and started off with a few things, and we had some success with them as far as nesting conditions and brood rearing, and how we diversify the crop rotation, and just kind of expanded from there, and ultimately, no matter what you do from a landscape standpoint, I mean, the more habitat you have, obviously the better, but ultimately it's Mother Nature that'll throw the final card on the table and dictate what's going to happen. So trying to work with what Mother Nature gives us, and every year is a little different, but we try to, with the habitat we have on the ground, it makes the bird hunting fairly consistent. I mean, there are years where it'll fluctuate. 2019 was a down year for birds on our property, that's for sure, just because of the extreme excess of moisture we had that year. But when you take a look at that, and then you roll into last year, 2020, which you're well aware of, Mother Nature works with you a little bit. You still have all the habitat on the ground. And once things kind of line up a little bit, bird numbers, pheasants especially, can just explode in 1 year. And it's kind of incredible when you see that happen, because last year our bird numbers were some of the best we've had in probably 5-6 years.
Really? I want to get into that. Like I said before, I want to get into what you're seeing now, but I still have more questions, I guess. And this will probably get maybe a little bit personal, and I apologize, but I'm trying to help our listeners understand, like this big operation. So you've got like 5,000 acres, a little bit more than 5,000 acres. What percent of your property do you feel like is in habitat right now, versus row crops? And, there's obviously water on your land too. But what percent do you need or feel like you need to have into habitat to have the wildlife population that you desire?
Yeah, well, and that's a good question, and there's no right answer for it, Travis, because the way I look at habitat is going to be different than most people. Right now, on our farm, we have approximately, let's say, 1,000 acres of spring wheat planted. And that is in crop production. But the way I look at that is that spring wheat is in the boot stage. It's starting to push a flag leaf, meaning that it's about a week away. It's just, some of it's just starting to head out. It's about a week away from heading. That provides unbelievable nesting conditions and brood rearing conditions for pheasants. So when it comes to the habitat discussion, I look at it differently than a lot of sportsmen do, or most people. And I'm not saying one's right or the other. Like I said, my mind kind of works somewhat crazy sometimes. But from a habitat standpoint, there's 90% of our acres that are, maybe even more, are at times throughout the year what you would call, wildlife habitat. So, the wheat fields early on, the cool season grasses, the native prairies, obviously, nesting conditions for waterfowl, pheasants, brood rearing conditions, the soybeans that are planted right now that are, most of them are just have emerged. Some are the last planted ones are emerged, maybe an inch or two tall. The early ones are maybe 3 to 4 inches tall. When you look in one of those fields, usually it's no-till. All our acres are no-till, so a lot of our soybeans are planted onto corn stubble from the year before. So you have that standing corn stubble. The soybeans are coming up through there, and you look at that, and to most people it doesn't look like much, but it's actually providing. You'll see a lot of pheasants and ducks nest in that. Is it the perfect nesting condition? No. Undisturbed grass. Some of our native prairies, obviously CRP, these intermittent wetlands that have a lot of native grasses, wetland grasses that isn't submerged in water. And this year, a lot of it isn't, just because we're a little drier now, provides, the best nesting conditions. But when you start taking a look at that, it all works together. So you take a look at that soybean field this year that are just coming up, that were no-tilled into a corn stubble from last year. It doesn't look like much, but it is providing nesting conditions. But more importantly, is as those soybeans grow and mature and they start canopying, they provide enough cover, lush green plant. They attract bugs. It's open kind of underneath those plants, and it's a amazing brood rearing cover. So if you have those planted, close to a wheat field where you have actual good nesting cover or undisturbed grasslands, it just kind of all works together. The same with the corn. A lot of the corn is shin high, and it doesn't look like much, but it's not with the heat we're having. We are a little dry. It would be nice to get a rain, but with the heat we're having, that stuff's going to grow pretty quick. And within a week to 10 days, there's a good chance a lot of that's going to be knee high, starting to canopy. And if you do have those early chicks that are hatched, it makes great brood rearing habitat because it's open underneath. It gives cover. And it all, the weather plays a part in it. Normally, in a prairie pothole region we're in, we get adequate moisture. Our mornings, even if it doesn't rain all the time, our mornings tend to be dewy. There's a lot of water just from the morning dew on all the plants, which creates a great environment for all your insects and soft-bodied bugs that those chicks need to survive. And it just all kind of works together. So when it comes to going back to your question of what percentage is habitat on our farm, it all depends on the snapshot during the time of year you're looking at. Throughout the course of the year, I would say it's 90 to 95%. But it all depends. So most people, when they say habitat, they're thinking, mid-October, I'm going to go pheasant hunting. Let's go take a look at the habitat. And, then you're taking a look at the intermittent wetlands, with the native grass and forbs that are in there, the smartweed, the canary grass, things like that. You're talking about a lot of the food plots we put in just for the birds to help them get through the winter. Obviously any of the undisturbed grasslands, small acres of CRP and things like that. But the big picture is it all works together. And I think that's where the story is, that I always try to help people understand is wildlife needs, for the most part, and I'm not a biologist, I'm just pretend to play one sometimes on podcasts, but wildlife tends to like a diversification. And in our landscape right now, we don't always have that in one area. But, because with production agriculture and everything like that, monocropping is just a nature of the beast. But if you can plan from a farming standpoint, if you can kind of plan your crop rotations, your fields, so you have a diverse array of crops planted in, let's say, a 600-acre area or a section that has multiple different crops that are maturing at different times, I think that's where the big benefit is. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but it gives you a little bit better, hopefully, understanding of the way I view and the way we as a family view wildlife habitat. Because it all has a potential, depending on the time of year, to be wildlife habitat, and I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the diversity is critical, but I would say there's a lot of soybean fields and a lot of sweet corn, or not sweet corn, but corn fields planted in South Dakota. They don't all house the population of pheasants that your fields do. So I think, if I'll say this, I'm often surprised at, let's say you take 640 acres, a full section, and you have maybe four or five 20-acre pieces of, maybe it's a pothole or cattails or grass. I mean, the small amount of food plots or grasslands or CRP parcels within that section, how many birds will thrive in there? So I guess maybe more my question would be like, you know, in a section, what do you feel is important to be wintering habitat, or the habitat that a hunter looks at when he drives out in November and, looks at a section and says, holy cow, that's a lot of grass, or I'm surprised there's not more grass there. One or the other.
Yeah, yeah. I guess when you look at it that way, it's always nice to try to hit that 20% rule.
Okay.
I mean, in the perfect world, but
Hmm.
what you're saying is exactly true. It doesn't take much sometimes to make a big impact. So you take a 160 acre quarter section of ground, and it has a 10-acre slough in it that is allowed to be, a wetland undisturbed. Um, that right there can produce an amazing amount of wildlife. It can provide nesting, winter habitat, depending on the type of cover, and it'll have a bigger impact than what you would think if you just said 10 acres. So yeah, I think your observation there is pretty well spot on. Sometimes it doesn't take much; it just takes small little pieces, and when you add them up, in a general area, the benefits can be pretty big.
What's your take on planting tree rows?
Um, I boy, being on the prairie here, that's always kind of a loaded question. I love them if they're done right, and we've made mistakes here. So we've planted some shelter belts in the past, and didn't really know what we're doing 15, 20 years ago. And some of the varieties, trees we chose to plant were great: cedars, junipers, shrubs. Your wild plums, your choke cherries in our area always seem to do well. That's great. And then we decided to throw in some taller trees, just for a little better structure for some of the shelter belts. But ultimately, when it comes to a wildlife standpoint, they're slower maturing. They provide perches and stuff for avian predators. Um, so, like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword. My thoughts on it, just from my novice point of view out here, is uh, conifers and shrubs are, if you're going to plant trees, or from a wildlife standpoint, are probably the best thing you can do. The white-tailed deer love them; they tend to mature a little faster, and obviously the pheasants use them for wintering habitat unbelievably well. The main thing and the people at the national or natural resource conservation districts across the state will tell you the same thing. Plant multiple rows and put them in an area where you're going to have the best benefit for winter protection. So, and by multiple rows, I mean 7 to 11 rows wide. They don't have to be quite as long, but doing a more of a block pattern. So when the snow blows out here in the prairie, they don't completely blow shut. It provides winter habitat. So trees are a great thing in the right spot, but out here on the prairie, it's there's a reason why there's not trees all over the place. It's just really not the environment for them. Grass is king out here, so I always try to focus a little bit more on that.
So you've tried a lot of different varieties of seeds, I'm sure, and different mixtures. If somebody says, all right, I just bought a 40-acre piece of property. It's my dream hunting property, and I want to plant habitat for pheasants, for deer, for turkeys, whatever. What is the best mixture, the best seed variety that you have found for planting?
Oh, well, first of all, man, that is a question that could go multiple directions, Travis.
I'm sure, but there's is because I know Pheasants Forever has a blend that they recommend, and I'm guessing
Right,
you've probably
yeah.
tried it.
Yep. So, I mean, are you talking specifically just winter food plot uh,
Well, I
planting,
don't.
or are you talking nesting brood rearing conditions? Because that's going to vary drastically. So
Hmm.
let's just
It's a
start.
tough, yeah, it's a tough question because I think, the ideal scenario is to have enough property that you can have a variety, right? Your
Right.
spring, your winter, all throughout the year, but it's not always the case for some people. So if they want to get the most benefit out of their their land and creating hunting grounds, what would you recommend?
Right. Well, let's talk about this fun little 40-acre piece that you had just talked about. Um, you know, from a 30,000 foot view, that 40 acres, I would, if I'm trying to get as much production from a wild bird population, wild pheasant, whatever is in that area, whether it's grouse or whatever. But in this specific case, let's just talk about pheasants because the habitat kind of varies a
Hmm.
little bit depending on species. I would look at probably half of it being nesting conditions. In the perfect world, let's take a look at 40 acres and let's put half of it into a diverse mix of CRP with whatever, depending on the area, whatever grasses work best for that area. Let's say it's right next to the farm here. I would be looking at a mix of cool and warm season grasses. In our area specifically, it seems like intermediate western wheat. If they're in some lower areas that tend to hold moisture a little better, tall wheatgrass on the cool season side, switchgrass on a warm season side, maybe throw some Indian grass in there. And then throwing the kitchen sink at it when it comes to adding forbs in the mix, coneflower, Indian blanket, some Maximilian sunflowers, a little bit of alfalfa, and maybe even throwing a little sweet clover in that mix. That sweet clover is kind of a biannual. It'll bloom about every 2 to 4 years, and when that happens, it's magical. It'll just provide some of the best nesting and brood rearing conditions you can find. And on the other half of that 40 acres, obviously you're going to need water on the property to make it the perfect thing, or have water real close by. Have a 5 to 10 acre, let's say a 5 acre shelter belt, thick winter habitat. If you don't have a shelter belt, hopefully you got maybe a natural wetland that has some cattail or real thick canary grass, and then putting in a 5 acre food plot next to that winter habitat, so it could provide the best protection for the wildlife. And when it comes to food plots in our area, you're trying to provide. When I look at them, I'm trying to provide our food plots are winter protection and a food source. Period. It's to help them get through our tough winters out here on the prairie,
Hmm.
and that's where I love the grain and forage sorghums. They provide great leaf on the plant, which provides thermal cover. They stand really well. They usually produce pretty good seed that the pheasants absolutely just love. White-tailed deer love it. So from let's try to, from a food plot standpoint, winter survivability standpoint, that's probably my favorite. If a guy was just going to pick one,
Sorghum.
yeah, doing a blend of grain and forage sorghums tends to work best. It really does, and the birds love it. The deer love it. So I guess that would kind of be how I would set that magical 40 acre piece of property up to try to give it the biggest benefit for wildlife. But the farmer in me would probably do it a little different. The farmer in me would I'll be honest with you, I would look at, if it doesn't have any native prairie on it that we can graze and manage with cattle, then the farmer in me would say, well, what are the best acres here that we could get a crop off of? And then I would try to identify those through the way the land lays, soil tests and things like that. And then, obviously still have some nesting areas and brood rearing areas and winter habitat. But if I could, identify maybe the 15, 20, 30, in this case, probably not that much, but, the real prime area that could be farmed and raise a crop, that's probably the way I'd look at it, right or wrong. But like I said, every situation is different and it changes as you go across the landscape. Every piece of ground is different. Every farm is different. So trying to basically take a look at what's there, what you want to have happen, and you, to the best of your ability, utilize everything that's there and not fight it so much, so.
Well, when you say, it varies, and I get that, somebody in Minnesota might be different than someone in, the ground in South Dakota or Nebraska or Montana or Illinois.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does vary. So you've got to work with a lot of different people. I know you work with Pheasants Forever closely, and are constantly in contact with them, but do you have one resource that has stood out as this is the most helpful resource, or the helpful, maybe it's NRCS or PF, or is there anybody that you could point to that says, I've been successful because of the help of this person or team?
In today's day and age, I think if you're going to point to one person in our operation specifically, it's your local FSA, NRCS office, and in a lot of those, you have the PF Farm Bill biologists.
Okay.
Working with one of them they are able to accelerate that learning curve for everyone because of the knowledge that they have, understanding not only from a habitat standpoint, if you're just talking about how do I create wildlife habitat, but understanding all the different the farm programs that might be able to be utilized to help provide, to fund some of those. Your local farm bill biologist. Me personally, my biggest resource, and if he hears this, he'll probably laugh, but you're talking about our Pheasants Forever state coordinator, Matt Morlock, who was, I think, one of the first Pheasants Forever Farm Bill biologists. I talked to him probably more than he wants to talk to me, throwing different ideas back and forth. But yeah, from our standpoint, I would say it would be Matt, just a wealth of knowledge. And the thing I like about him and the Farm Bill biologists in general is, they're there to help you identify a problem and fix it, or identify your goals and try to make them a reality. Whether it's how do we make this farm field the best it can be, or how do we make wildlife habitat? They look at it, from my experience, they've always looked at it from a standpoint of how do we make your farm the best it can be? And that's what I appreciate. It's not how do we put wildlife on the landscape first. It's more so what are your problems? How do we fix them? We want to make your farm profitable, productive, and by doing that, I'm pretty confident that there's always some area that can be designated to wildlife habitat.
I walked with Matt in the field last fall for a day, and you're right. I mean, just the amount of knowledge that he has and the wisdom, it's beneficial for so many people. I want to get into what you're seeing on the ground right now. Bird numbers, habitat, water, everything. It's a hot topic right now. Hot, unfortunately, is a word that we have to use. But first, a quick message from Chief Upland. For generations, bird hunters have hit the fields carrying some form of a vest or game pouch on their backs. Sometimes the vest rip, tear, and fall apart. Other times they're downright uncomfortable. That's why Chief Upland designed a vest that's durable, comfortable, and fits your needs. Their new Upland vest is fully customizable to fit the size and shape of all hunters. Plus, you can decide where you want to attach your shell pouches and accessories. Last fall, I tested a Chief Upland vest, and I love it. Birds can be front-loaded into the game pouch, and they fit nicely in the back without sagging. That's a big deal because the weight disbursement on your back and shoulders won't tire you out even with a full pouch of birds. The vest itself is extremely lightweight, weighing only 2.56 pounds. The material is built out of Cordura fabric, which is the same waterproof fabric used in tactical military gear. You can confidently hunt with a Chief Upland vest in some of the world's toughest environments. I can say my Chief Upland vest is one of the nicest hunting vests that I've ever worn. Push further and hunt longer with the game-changing vest from Chief Upland, built for your pursuit. All right, Eric, what are you seeing right now on you're just east of the Missouri River, you're west of Aberdeen, South Dakota, you're kind of sort of central South Dakota. Are you in a severe drought?
Yeah, if you take a look at the drought index and the map that FSA and the Farm Service Agency puts out, we are technically in a severe drought. So that sounds bad, and it isn't great. The good news is I'm kind of an eternal optimist, Travis. So the good news is, the good news is 2020 our bird numbers were amazing. Like I said earlier, some of the best we've seen in a handful of years. We had a great winter. There was, in our area, there was, one could say, zero winter stress on the wildlife. So a good majority, if not all the birds that we were seeing late last fall made it through the winter. And we had good subsoil moisture from the previous 2 years. So the early habitat conditions are looking pretty good. The birds are out there. Habitat conditions, nesting conditions, the wheat fields, the CRP fields, the undisturbed grasses, the native prairies had some growth as long as they were managed right. That's the key, and that's a whole nother discussion. But they had some good early growth. So that's a positive side of it. The concerning side is right now is it has been abnormally dry for the last 10 days, and the forecast looks like we're going to see some 90s pushing 100 degrees here for the next week. And we just haven't had much moisture. We had about a half an inch of precip about 5 days ago. Unfortunately, when you're fairly dry and it's 90 plus degrees, half an inch of rain doesn't go very far, and it hardly even pushes the needle on making a big difference. So that's a concern. It is not looking the greatest if you just take a look at it right now, as far as having the absolute best nesting habitat brooding conditions weather-wise we can have. But it isn't a complete, all-out disaster. Things are actually looking halfway decent considering the dryness we've had. And if we catch a rain over the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks, I think we're going to be doing really well. So there's, like I said, there's always good news and bad news. The good news is we had some of the best bird population this spring, coming into this spring that we've had. The early conditions were pretty good, as long as you manage your property and that you have the habitat there a little bit for them. The wheat fields really took off great. They're starting to show a little bit drought stress now. It's more so getting a little bit of rain, keeping everything lush and growing, and getting some of our morning dew back that we've missed here with this crazy heat we've had. And then I think we're going to be all right. So I have seen some hatches, young chicks out there already. And we're just starting in our area. I guess I always look at it, we're just starting to get in our main hatch. So it's usually hits that mid-June, toward the end of June, early July is kind of when it seems like that's a magical time for the pheasants. So I'm pretty optimistic. The one thing you have to understand is as long as you give them a little bit of chance from a habitat standpoint, a little bit of diversification on the landscape, a little bit of everything they need, nesting, brood rearing, they are, pheasants in particular are probably one of the most that I've seen, some of the toughest animals out there. And they're really able to kind of defy odds sometimes. When you take a look at when they just hatch, how delicate and fragile they are. And you kind of shake your head and you wonder, how could you even survive a day out here on this prairie, let alone make it to maturity? It's kind of mind boggling. So I think it's important not to underestimate those little pheasants. They're tough. So I'm cautiously optimistic that I think we're going to have a pretty good year, but it's too early to tell. The big key is to hopefully get a couple thunderstorms to pop up and give us some moisture here in the short term.
Without hail.
Yeah, without hail. Hail's always the dirty word nobody wants to talk about. It's not good for anything.
Well, pretend I didn't say that. When you come off of a good winter like we just had, do you ever see that, the brood sizes are larger in a spring, or does it not really matter? It only depends on what's currently on the ground in the spring nesting conditions.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I really don't know the answer to that, Travis. I always assume brood sizes to current conditions. Most of the time, if I'm bumping nests, and scouting fields and things like that, you'll bump a hen and you stop, take a look, you'll find a nest, and a lot of those nests, they got 12 to 18 eggs in them. And it really doesn't matter the year. It's all about what's going to be the survivability of that. So if we have the right conditions, usually I'm concerned about cool overnight temps, trying to stay above 50, 55 overnight. This year, that really isn't an issue.
Yeah, we'd love to see 55 right now just for a night.
Yeah, so this year it's all about getting a little bit more moisture on the landscape, just to try and to create an environment where we have, lots of insects. The nesting conditions are there. It's just a matter of, I think right now, what I would be most concerned about is making sure we get some precip so we can kind of get a little bit of moisture back in the soil, get the growing crops and the plants out there to start utilizing that. And that kind of builds your morning dews and things that it seems like the insects need and the pheasants really thrive on. So
I feel like this, the conditions are really, if you have a mature hen, a mature rooster that made it through last winter, probably will make it through this drought, but you're going to lose your chicks, right? I mean, that's your biggest, you want to recruit, and that's why we need this moisture right now. Otherwise, we're going to start losing chicks.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, pheasants are a renewable resource. Yeah, we have a lot of holdover from last year, which is a huge benefit. But most of the birds you're going to see on the landscape were born that year, on any given year. So yeah, it's trying to get Mother Nature to cooperate just a little bit and get those birds hatched and raised successfully.
A lot of people that I've hunted with that own, that manage their land for pheasants, the last weekend of the season, they'll invite as many people out as possible and try to take out as many roosters off their property as they can. Do you do the same, or do you want to? I mean, their goal is to give the hens as much um, habitat and food as possible to make it through the winter. Do you do the same or something similar?
Well, yeah. I mean, if the weather's nice and we don't have crazy sub-zero temperatures and knee deep snow,
Hmm.
um, yeah, our end of the year hunt, invite some friends out, and we'll try to harvest some birds. When it comes to making a real conscious effort of trying to thin out birds, I guess it's never really been a big concern of mine. Um, yes, you don't want to have too many roosters going into a winter to compete with the hens, because they will naturally, if it gets tough and you get a lot of snow and cold temperatures and the cover starts getting blown shut and there's only so much available.
Uh-huh.
I believe if you talk to a wildlife biologist, the studies will show that the rooster is a little more dominant, and they'll actually push the hens out when it gets to those measures. But I think the most important thing is always prepare for the worst, from a habitat standpoint. So make sure you have, in our area especially, is making sure you have that winter habitat. So when things do get bad, hopefully you have plenty still out there, food and thermal cover for the carrying capacity or your population of birds. But yeah, I don't know what the studies show in particular. I've heard, I mean, we've all heard numbers thrown out there, from you only need one rooster per 12 hens, or something like that. I guess at the end of the year, I feel like we've managed our rooster harvest, from a hunting standpoint, about what we can. If I'm seeing 6 hens to every rooster flushed, that makes me feel pretty good. I
Hmm.
guess I feel like we're doing our job. But then again, I'm always a little more conservative. I don't mind seeing a few more roosters going in the winter, because I'm pretty confident in the habitat that we have out there to get everything
Support
through
it.
the winter. Yeah.
Got it. So let's talk some numbers here. And I know you're a modest guy and you probably don't want to talk yourself up, but what is the biggest flush you've ever seen of pheasants on your property? Can you guess how many birds got up at one time?
Oh my God, this sounds like a really good fish story.
Yes. Well, I want to give people an idea of what this looks like because they've probably read about it, or they've seen this epic pheasant flush, and you live it. You live out there. What does it look like?
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I've seen some pretty cool things over the course of 15, 20 years guiding pheasant hunters and being in the field a lot, um, as far as bird numbers and flushes and things like that. And last year, I stopped and just stood in awe a couple times in our late season hunts. Um, I tend to get a little numb to it when you're seeing it all the time. When you walk into a field and it's cold and
Hmm.
the birds can hear you and they're grouped up in the winter cover, whether they're the cattail sloughs or the sorghum food plots and corn and sorghum food plots, and you see 150, 200 birds kind of get up just out of gun range, fly a little ways and float back down. That's something we see a lot. So I get a little numb to that. But
Hmm.
last year, and in previous years, I've I've probably seen flushes of over 1,000 birds, um,
Unreal.
pretty easily.
Unreal.
I mean, other people that were out there in the field would say it's a lot more than that. But
Yeah.
it's always hard to tell. Sometimes you see 50 birds and you could have swore it was 100.
Uh-huh.
But that is the magical thing. When you work hard, you put together a plan, you do the work, you work, if you're an average farmer, rancher, landowner that's managing property, you're working your weekends. Other people are at the lake on Memorial Day weekend and you're out there planting food plots, or you're out there, in the spring doing a prescribed burn on some CRP, or you're trying to figure out how to make this, or you're spot spraying some noxious weeds and some CRP on your vacation time, on your weekends when everybody else is having fun, they're golfing during the summer. Then you get to the fall of the year and everything kind of aligns. You had good weather and you see the fruit of your labor and you see those big flushes. A lot of times those big flushes, all those birds, it doesn't always happen by accident. There's a lot of work that needs to be, put into that. There's a lot of planning and proper habitat that needs to go in there. And when Mother Nature works with you and you see that is a thing that dreams are made of. And it makes all that work worth it. I mean, just one day you go out there, things work good. You get a chance to hit the field with your dog and some friends, and it seems like you're surrounded by birds all day. You've seen it, and that's the thing that we all kind of dream of from a hunting standpoint and a wildlife standpoint. It's pretty special. It makes all the work, all the sweat equity, all the time spent. It makes it all worth it.
So do you still enjoy it then? All that work, you're not fishing, not golfing on a weekend. You still enjoy it?
Strangely enough, as crazy as it sounds, yes.
Good.
I
absolutely.
Glad to hear that. Like this last weekend, I basically worked Saturday and Sunday, just working on getting some food plot sprayed and things like that. So there are times when I kind of look at myself in the mirror thinking, what are you doing? But I'll be honest with you, it's always worth it. It always is. As crazy as it sounds, me personally, having a productive farm and ranch, raising some of the best crops we can, treating the prairie, using the cattle as a tool the best we can, and then seeing how the wildlife responds, it's pretty exciting. It really is. It's something that always keeps me and us as a family kind of going.
A couple final questions here. We'll stick with numbers for a second. Can you estimate at its best how many pheasants are on your property?
Yeah. Well, if you're talking an estimate, guesstimate, that could be off by 50 to 80% at best.
Throw a number out there. Yeah.
I would say on average, the carrying capacity is 4,000 to 6,000 birds after a hatch, right? After, if you're taking a look at September, October, and we have a good year, that's a production of birds or the population that seems to be pretty consistent. Obviously there's years where there's been more, there's years there's been less. It's all weather dependent. You can do everything underneath the sun from a habitat standpoint, and have everything just dialed in. And sometimes Mother Nature just will not cooperate with you. And, there's really nothing you can do about it. But you can't always, I guess, I always look at it from a weather, Mother Nature standpoint. If you don't do everything you can for the habitat, you don't have a chance. So, and even though you have a year where numbers are down, you're going to see more birds, you're going to see more wildlife where you have better habitat. It might not be the greatest a person's ever seen. It definitely might not be anything that hits all-time high marks, but habitat, having a diversification of habitat will always mitigate the effects that weather has on wildlife population. So,
I mean, it's the most important word in hunting. It really is.
I think it is. I personally do. But yeah, so,
it's going to vary. That.
Yeah. So it's going to vary, the landscape is going to vary depending on what weather does, but the habitat is kind of, it levels out your low points is what it does. It kind of helps bring up your average.
Do you have a goal? And you mentioned this earlier. When you have hunters come in, you set your hunter numbers based on what you find for bird numbers in your field, and this is all 100% wild birds. Understanding, So do you say, this is a number I want to take off? And if so, what is that number to you? I mean, what's the most roosters you've shot or hunters have shot on your land? And what do you aim for?
That's a great question. Yeah, because we're all wild birds, we don't really start booking until that, even get excited about booking hunters until February. So we have a pretty good idea of what our winter looks like, as far as survivability. And then we just start, I guess we just start working the numbers backwards, Travis. The birds dictate everything of what we're able to do here. So assuming we have this population of birds coming in February, March, and we're getting past the worst of the winter, we feel pretty confident about this is what we're going to have for a survivability rate. Then you take a look at if we have an average hatch and each hen raises 6 birds, 5, 6 birds of maturity. You kind of work it backwards, and then you figure out your harvest, hopefully what you can have. And obviously that always varies. But we always try to look at it from a conservative standpoint. The last thing we want to do is take more than the resource than what it has the ability to give. So most years on average, I mean, we're not harvesting a lot of birds by some people's standpoint, but it varies in that 750 to 1,200 birds a year, pretty conservatively.
Well, that's a big difference, though, in hunting birds that get released to replenish that supply and birds that have to nest and grow wild on their own. So, I mean, that's a heavy amount of birds, no doubt about that. You're busy year round. I mean, do you ever take a vacation and leave the property, or can you? I mean, you're a lot of farmers, during the winter months have a little time on their hands, but you're out there walking fields with hunters.
Well, yeah, I mean, winter months, January, February, March is a little slower time. It gets back to a normal 40-hour work week. A lot of times feeding cattle, doing that, which is always nice. But I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. If you're farming, ranching, your primary reason for doing it is not because you get a nice 40-hour work week and paid vacation and a nice paycheck. Your primary reason is just for the love of the land, and the lifestyle it provides. So yes, I get a little time off here and there. If you ask my wife, it's probably not near enough. But the magical part with me is in the fall of the year when I'm guiding hunters. Yes, it's work, but I'm kind of on vacation then, because I'm just doing what I absolutely love doing is showing others the work that's been put into the operation to try to have the best wildlife population we can have, and letting them experience that. And seeing the looks on their faces when everything kind of comes together and they have a great hunt and a great experience. That's a magical part right there. That makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Last question. What's your long-term goal for the entire Johannsen family farms?
Good question. I think the main thing is just keep it viable and profitable going in the future, and that's probably going to change. Like everything changes, and understanding that just because you have this vision, just because a person has a vision of what you want it to be or what you want to do going into the future, sometimes understanding that you got to kind of roll with the punches and adapt in today's day and age, I think is more important. But in the perfect world, yeah, hopefully have my daughter, maybe have a nephew if he's interested in coming back to the farm, and getting that next generation up and rolling so they're in a position to make it the best it can be from a soil standpoint, from a production standpoint, from a wildlife standpoint. Hopefully instilling all those things into them, because that's where the importance is what's going to happen in the future, and how we basically do everything on a farm and ranch to make it the best possible farm to pass on, and hopefully instilling those values and teaching the next generation how to do that. So,
well, I think you're doing a great job already, and I've enjoyed following along on your farming operation. I hope someday, God, it's just a dream of mine, but someday to move out there and be able to do something just like you're doing right alongside of you. I'll call you and you'll have to teach me, but I think I'm a few years away from being able to make that a reality now.
Yeah, well, anytime you want to come out, just let me know. We'll get you out here and kind of experience some of it, and maybe you can learn a few things, or I can learn a few things.
Sounds good. It would be my pleasure to be able to come out there and just walk it once, just to see it. 1,000 bird flush. It's a guarantee, right?
No, but trust me, we do everything in our power to try to make sure everybody gets to see that.
Yeah, no, I understand. I totally understand. I'm just joking. Well, if somebody wants to learn more about your operation, it's johannsenfarms.com. I highly recommend it. I know I've had numerous people reach out to me and say, where would you go if you wanted to bring somebody out to experience pheasant hunting at its finest? And I tell them all the time, check out Eric Johannsen's place. He works the ground. He farms it for wild birds, and they are there. And there's a lot of them there. So johannsenfarms.com. And then you're also on social media as well, right?
Yeah, if people want to kind of follow along what's going on the farm and ranch throughout the year, Johannsen Farms on Instagram, and I think it's Johannsen Farms on Facebook as well. Probably not as active as we should be, but we try to keep some updates on there so people can see what's going on different times of the year and what's all happening.
Well, it's not possible to be very active on social media and keep a farm in good standings, I would imagine. So we'll post a link to that as well on this feed. So check that out, and you'll see what Eric and his family are up to. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, Federal Premium Ammunition, Onyx Hunt, North Dakota Tourism, and Chief Upland for helping us to make this show possible. Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Travis.
If you need a bird hunting fix, you can watch all of the episodes of the Flush television show available in their entirety on our YouTube channel. Simply search for the Flush TV and you'll find each episode. If you have questions or ideas for this show, please continue to send them my way. I've received a lot of them in the last few weeks. I love it. I will love to hear from you and want to hear more. It'll help us to make this podcast something that benefits you, that you enjoy listening to. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching Flush TV or theflush.tv. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank, reminding you to take the time to introduce someone new to the field.